Intelligent design is a contemporary scientific approach towards studying biology. It uses current scientific practices to detect patterns and mechanisms in life that allow us to infer the activity of a designing intelligence. Critics of ID today complain that this project is a mistake, that postulating a designer will just stop scientific progress. They say we should not look for evidence of a designer because, well, this search is unscientific. But are they right? In this podcast, I'm going to give you an argument from the history of science that shows that they're dead wrong. Did you know that your body has around 60,000 miles of blood vessels that carry blood to and from your tissues and your organs? Medical science today now knows how important this network is for maintaining health. Our arteries are thick-walled vessels that carry oxygenated blood away from our hearts into our muscles and other tissues. Capillaries are thin vessels that transport blood containing waste and nutrients between arteries and veins, and the veins are what carry deoxygenated blood back to the heart again. The pulmonary circulatory system is, well, circular. The system efficiently reuses our blood supply, which is constantly reoxygenated again and pumped out to nourish the body's tissues. Amazing. But the human body wasn't always viewed this way. In the 2nd century, Galen was a physician to the gladiators in Pergamon, and he observed the still beating hearts of the dying. His studies of humans and animals led him to think that blood originated in the liver and was pumped out to the rest of the body where it was consumed. Now, in the 1500s, Colombo discovered the heart had 4 valves and blood only flowed through the heart in one direction. Fabricius's investigations brought a curious thing to light. Now, the belief at the time was that the blood was continually produced from the digestion of food in the body. But as Fabricius studied blood vessels, he discovered that the veins had miles of tiny valves built into the walls of those blood vessels. Veins had valves, while arteries didn't, and he didn't know why. Now, Fabricius had a talented student by the name of William Harvey. Harvey studied the circulatory system, and he also was interested in those venous valves. Now, first, Harvey learned around 5 kilograms of blood is pumped by the human heart every hour. So the idea that this volume of blood was being dissipated into the tissues and then constantly replenished, it just seemed impossible. He wrote, "I had very often thought how great the amount of transmitted blood would be and in how short a time. And I began privately to think that it might rather have a certain movement, as it were, in a circle." Well, second, Harvey was fascinated by those venous valves. Now, he observed how they functioned. He experimented on human cadavers and tried to make blood flow down the vein in an arm. And he found that the blood wouldn't go. But he could easily pump the blood upwards in the arm's vein. He realized that the veins were the blood vessels that allowed blood to flow back to the heart. And those ingenious one-way valves in the vein wall, they maintained the correct one-way flow. Harvey's only way to account for those valves was that they were the result of design in the human body. He said, "So provident a cause as nature had not so placed so many valves without design. And no design seemed more probable than that." He realized that this valve mechanism wasn't junk to be ignored, and it wasn't just there by accident. It had a vital function in the body, and so it was therefore reasonable to infer that it was the result of prior design. Third, Harvey predicted that one day scientists would find blood vessels connecting the arteries and veins in the body. And his prediction was shown correct when in 1661 small capillaries between arteries and veins were discovered. Now, William Harvey is viewed today as a groundbreaker. I spoke to one retired doctor who happens to be my own dad, and he described Harvey as a scientific genius. Why? Well, he was the first pathologist, one who studies the body's tissues to attempt to understand and cure disease. He started the fruitful practice of experimentation in medicine. He also began the field of physiology, the study of the body's normal function. It is said that his discovery of the pulmonary circulation system is therefore the greatest medical discovery of all time because it launched medicine as we know it today. But notice something. His analysis of the mechanisms that he found in the pulmonary system began from a particular starting point. He simply thought that the venous valves were designed for a purpose. Now, today, many scientists will claim that life is the result of purposeless natural mechanisms and there was no designer involved. According to Francisco Ayala, Charles Darwin's greatest achievement was showing how the organised complexity of organisms could be attained without designing intelligence. Now, that claim is facing more challenge today in science circles than ever before. And I talked about some of those challenges in a previous video. I'll put the link to that in the show notes below. Many scientists today will claim that intelligent design is a science stopper, because if we posit a designer, then we'll just stop doing science. To every natural problem we find, we will just throw our hands up and say, oh, God did it. We don't need to study this in any way. Well, we see exactly the opposite of this behaviour in the life of William Harvey. He inferred the involvement of a designer in the arrangement of venous valves. Did he just stop work at that point, saying, well, because God made this, there's no further work to be done? Not at all. Now, given his inference to a designer and the designer's purpose, Harvey worked hard to understand what that purpose might be. And he realised it was the returning of blood to the heart. That realisation alone transformed medicine. From our vantage point today, Harvey's valves are pretty simple examples of biological design, but contemporary scientists have looked much deeper into biology, and the closer they look, the more astounding and complex the molecular machines that we find there. From the amazing blood clotting system to the bacterial flagellum. Does the assumption of design stop scientific progress? Well, not for talented, motivated scientists. It fuels their discoveries. It causes them to work hard to understand the function and purpose of things in nature. Let's pause for a moment. Whenever I watch a nature program or learn about the complexity of life, I'm often reminded of the passage in Psalm 139. It says this, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Now, the ancient psalmist sure didn't know much about biology, but he looked at his own body and its capabilities, and he responded by worshipping God. Have you ever considered responding in this way when you look at the wonders of the natural world? Many people through history have done this. Isaac Newton responded in worship. So did Johannes Kepler. So did William Harvey. He said this: "The examination of the bodies of animals has always been my delight, because we obtain an insight into the lighter mysteries of nature and also perceive a kind of image of the omnipotent Creator himself." Harvey delighted in nature, and it pointed him to God. I think this is probably the case for all Christian believers, whether they think life evolved to some extent by some kind of evolutionary process, or whether they think life was created by God with the ability to adapt to its environment. Wherever we stand, at the root of it all is the God who created us and loves us. Allow science to stimulate your thinking today, but also allow it to lead you towards bending the knee to Jesus. His works are wonderful, and we are his works. Whether or not you feel wonderful today, you really are. So let's respond by worshipping our wonderful, loving, and powerful God. This podcast is based on the lecture, "When Should We Trust Scientists?" given by Dr. David Snoke to the Christian Scientific Society on the 6th of November 2021. It's part of a series of lectures entitled 5 Decades of Faith-Science Interaction, a tribute to Bob Newman. You can stream Dr. Snoke's lecture from the apologetics.com Vimeo channel.